There are many things that go into creating a cinematic image, from frame rate, shutter speed, aperture, lens choice, lighting, composition, and much, much more. But in this video I want to talk about something that you could consider the cherry on the cake when it comes to making cinematic images, and that's diffusion. Or at least that's what you'll hear if you're in any way familiar with filmmaking YouTube. And this isn't to be confused with the type of diffusion that you have on your lights, but rather this is the type of diffusion that you screw onto the end of your lens. There are many YouTubers on here talking about how diffusion is their secret sauce into gaining a cinematic image, and how that they'll permanently have one screwed onto the end of their lens and never leave home without it. They all have fancy names like an expensive coffee, the filters, not the YouTubers, black mist, satin shimmer, white mist, glimmer something or other. And although they are all slightly different, they roughly do the same thing. Now, I've never used a diffusion filter before, so when Seven Artisans reached out to me and said, would I be interested in testing out any of their filters, I said, send me over some of them black mist filtery things, because I wanted to see what all the fuss was about. Plus, who doesn't want more cinematic images? So how do they work? We all know the old school VHS look, and although video cameras have come a long way since the 1980s, there's still a few things that give them away compared to film. Lack of dynamic range, overly contrasty images, bad highlight detail and poor highlight roll-off, and an over-sharpness to everything. And part of the idea of using a diffusion filter is that they reduce or compensate for some of these problems. They do this in the same way that the fusion on your light will help to create a softer light source. Light particles hit the diffusion material, or in this case the particles in the diffusion filter, and it is spread out or dispersed out into a wider pattern, helping to soften the light in this case, or soften the image in the case of the filter. Another way of looking at this is that light from a very bright area is encouraged to bleed over into areas of less brightness. This creates a softer contrast in the overall image. It blooms highlights and gives a kind of glow around strong light sources, and it decreases the sharpness of the overall picture. Check out this footage of a candle without any diffusion. Now, with a 1/8 black mist filter, you can see how the light from the flame now blooms out. It's even easier to see with a 1/4 strength attached. As a complete aside, one thing to remember is that the same filter on a longer lens will produce a stronger effect than that filter on a wide lens. So if you're planning on going from wide to long and using diffusion, you might want to reduce the strength of the filter when going to the long lens. Seven Artisans make the black mist filter in 3 strengths, 1/8, 1/4 and half strength. As I said, these filters were sent over by Seven Artisans. Thanks to them for helping make this video possible. They have a number of different filters available over on their website, not just black mist, but softening filters, polarizers, ND filters and more. I know it's not that important, but this filter comes in a nice quality cardboard box. They're really strong and feel like they're made of wood or something. The filters live in a pretty standard plastic case, nothing special, but it does the job. They're made with an aviation grade aluminium frame and something called K9 glass. Let me just read what the website says about it. K9 optical raw glass material is precision ground and polished to achieve good parallelism, uniform optical particles, fine optical adjustment, texture features to ensure the quality of photography. I have absolutely no idea what that means, but it sure does sound reassuring to me. And of course the filters are water, oil and scratch resistant. So I put together this short little sequence to see if a diffusion filter makes your images any more cinematic. I didn't have much time or resources, which means the lighting could have been better. In an attempt to get some sort of shape, I turned off the ceiling lights, turned every other light on, including the outside security lights. I even turned the TV on in an attempt to get some backlighting happening, even if it does lead to continuity issues. But the point isn't really how cinematic are the images to begin with, but are they any more cinematic when using the black mist filter? Hopefully this lighting will test that question. I should also say that the grade is exactly the same in both sequences. I used a Phantom film LUT, link down in the description, and made the tiniest white balance shift towards a cooler temperature. That's all I did, and I directly copied that straight over onto the second sequence using the black mist filter. I haven't tried to compensate for anything or change anything to make things look better. It's exactly the same color grade on both clips. In some shots the filters seem to have little to no effect. They have more of an effect when a light source is in the frame, like the TV or the switch of the kettle. Then you can see the blooming of the highlights quite clearly. Shadows don't seem to be affected, and this is sort of the idea behind the black mist. Compared to other diffusion filters, they don't affect the shadows as much. On some of the wider shots you can see the TV has a glow around it when the filter is attached. This is only the 1/8 strength, but already I feel that it's at the limit of what I'd want to see. Any more than this and I think the effect would become distracting. Having said that, I do think it's an effect that I quite like, although I'm not entirely sure if I would call it cinematic or not. Maybe it's just different, and sometimes different can be a novelty. So what do you think? Do you see a big difference between the filter on and the filter off? Let me know in the comments. One of the things you hear more and more often is filmmakers talking about how they want to introduce character into their images. More and more people are choosing to shoot on vintage lenses with imperfections. Now, this might seem counterintuitive at first. Why would you want to have imperfections in your image? But I think what they're striving after is really a more organic looking image. As camera resolutions get bigger and lens technologies get better, we're left with sharper images. And the downside to this is they can begin to look a little bit sterile. They lose the warmth that comes from the photochemical process of shooting film. And as organic organisms, I feel that we probably have more of a connection to the organic process of developing film and shooting on film than we do to the digital one. So we look to other parts of the shooting film process, particularly from the older bygone eras, and things like imperfect lenses help to create those little kind of organic qualities and mask or even de-hance our perfect digital images. And this is also where a diffusion filter comes in. It can soften up a modern lens and introduce imperfections into the quality of the glass that weren't there originally and help to lend a sort of character to the digital images. Here's a clip of Oscar-winning cinematographer Roger Deakins, Sir Roger Deakins to you, talking about how he loves to use diffusion and old lenses to get character into his images.
I'm not somebody that will go to old lenses because I like the patina of an old lens or something. I don't understand that myself. I find any artifact that is like on the surface of the image is a distraction for me.
Wait, what? He doesn't do any of that. Right. Well, kind of wish I knew that before I got to this part in the video, really. Don't know what to say. If Roger don't do it, maybe you shouldn't do it. But it's okay, because the truth is some cinematographers love diffusion, like Janusz Kaminski, and use it on nearly everything they shoot, film or digital, and others, like Deakins, don't use it at all when exclusively shooting digital. So it turns out that it's all really just a bit subjective, like so much of filmmaking. Some people love to have diffusion on their lenses and think that it really does help to create cinematic images, and other people just don't care about it. I use the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras quite often, and I feel that they do a good job of not looking overly digital. I think that that's probably something that Blackmagic spent a lot of time and effort in trying to achieve. So for me, I don't think that I would possibly want to use a diffusion filter all the time on these cameras. But if I was shooting with a camera that had a reputation for being more digital looking, then maybe my opinion would be different, and I would think that, yeah, I do want to use a black mist filter on the end of my lens 24/7 all the time to help to reduce that digital look and to create a more cinematic image. Going forward, these will definitely be filters that I have in my filmmaking kit, and I will use probably quite often. As I said, shooting at nighttime, shooting when there's a lot of light sources around, it can definitely help to create an effect, and if you want, you can call that effect cinematic. But for me, it's not something that I would choose to use all the time. It's going to be on a case-by-case basis, and that's something that I probably go on a little bit too much about in my videos and on my channel. I don't always come to a definitive conclusion, but I think that's kind of how the real world is. You have to pick the right tool for the right job, and the right tool for the right job isn't always the same tool. If you like the look that these filters give, then be sure to check them out in the description down below. And if you're going to use a filter, you're going to need a lens to put it on. So you may also want to check out this video here talking about good lenses for the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. Thanks for getting this far. Like and subscribe, or don't, it's up to you. Enjoy yourself. Have a great rest of the day.